Hey, howdy and hello, folks. Welcome into T1A. This is the case for Treylon Burks for 2023. Abandon all hope. The stakes are stacked too much in the favor that Treylon Burks is a failure, and the likelihood of him redeeming himself are slim to none. But we're going to take a look at his 2022 season, where he was at in college, and kind of what we're seeing now and for the future. Treylon Burks, the odds are stacked against you. So needless to say, 2022 was a rough year for Treylon Burks, especially as a fantasy manager and believing in his potential. To say it was rough is kind of, sugarcoating it a little bit. Starts way back at the draft. He goes probably a little too high in the draft and is expected to be A.J. Brown, which the Titans trade away and subsequently use the pick that they receive to draft Treylon Burks. He starts out with extreme expectation. Then the dude comes in to OTAs and rookie training camp completely out of shape. In an honest look, he was just not in shape. He probably got to his pro day and figured he'd get back to it later. Well, NFL has high demands, and he wasn't in shape, let alone shape to be a starting NFL wide receiver. Being at Arkansas, he was probably able to dominate people, able to dominate his opponents, and so he was probably used to being just mostly good. He does have some abilities to show that he can be an elite player. Obviously, the Titans wouldn't have drafted him if they didn't see that potential in him. Everything that happened in the 2022 season really left a bad taste in fantasy managers' mouths. And it never really left. So preseason comes, we see him play in 3 games, and he barely manages 37 yards. Ouch. Okay, not a big deal. We saw Jamar Chase drop 3 balls on his 3 targets and tell us that he has trouble identifying the ball and then started the season just fine. We start the season, we see Treylon Burks line up as the X or the alpha wide receiver position. Same thing that A.J. Brown was doing. All those expectations just poured in. Burks will then, line up approximately 83% of his snaps outside. Spends a lot of his time on the line. I believe about 70+%. He lined up on the line of scrimmage. That's just a complete flip of what he was doing in college, where he was 80% of the time in the slot and approximately 80+% of the time off the line. Just to recap all this information here, we have a slot guy drafted, likely higher than he should have gone, who's coming into the NFL, out of shape, learning a new position, and drawing comps, expectation, and coverage of the same guy who had the role before him. Pretty steep uphill battle. He's also doing this with a wide receiver room that's truly only veteran experience is Robert Woods. Granted, he took a few years to develop, but there's not a lot of mentorship happening in that locker room. The other receivers, Kyle Phillips is a rookie as well. Westbrook Akine, he's in his 2nd year. So, there's not much there to teach Treylon how to be an alpha receiver. At the completion of the 2022 season, Burks ends up playing in 11 games, starting 6 of them, has 54 targets, 33 receptions, 444 yards, and 1 touchdown. He averages 13.5 yards per reception, and his average yard per target is 8.2, which those are some rough numbers. He ends up being the wide receiver 78 on the year, and it's due to quite a few factors. Ryan Tannehill ends up missing 5 games out of the year, played a total of 8 games with Burks, Burks also ends up catching passes from Willis in one game. Well, not really. He had 2 targets, didn't have a single reception in that game. After week 10 is where the season really starts to take a turn for Treylon Burks. It's common to see a rookie wide receiver start to really turn it around, mid-season, start to get the hang of things, start to break coverages, start to have a little bit of excitement, and that's what we got to see from Treylon Burks. There was some fire, there was a small streak, a window, so to speak. We got to see maybe a glimpse of what Treylon Burks could be. So, recent notables of rookie wide receivers that we see start to really come on at the end of the year, really late bloomer like Amon-Ra St. Brown, or somebody that kind of bloomed, earlier in Justin Jefferson. Burks sees 6+ targets for weeks 10, 11, and 12. We see some production, 3 receptions for 24 yards, 7 receptions for 111 yards, and then 4 receptions for 70 yards. Then in week 13, on his lone catch, which is his touchdown, is 1 touchdown, he gets a head injury and heads into concussion protocol for the next couple weeks. He'll end up returning to the team to face Houston with Malik Willis at the helm and sees 2 targets despite playing most of the game. Burks' final 2 games with Dobbs at quarterback, he ends up playing about 75% of the snaps, sees 8 targets, 4 receptions, and 66 yards in week 17, and 8 targets, 4 receptions, and 19 yards in week 18. So we'll step it back just a bit here. Let's look at Burks in college. He spent 80% of his time in the slot and was fantastic at slant, screens, and flat plays, where he could beat an unset zone or use his normally considered X receiver frame to outpower tacklers, create some room to run, and start to break off some chunk yards. He ends up averaging over 16 yards a reception all through college. He was very successful in his growth through college, and he went from 29 receptions his first year to 55, and then finished with 66 receptions, 1,104 yards, and he amassed 11 touchdowns his junior year. Let's move back into this year. The Titans added no competition for Burks and his future potential workload. They added Colton Dowell in the 7th round and Chris Moore, who played previously in Houston, in free agency. This means it's really going to come down to Chigozie Ngakwo, Kyle Phillips, Nick Westbrook-Akine, and Treylon Burks. Kyle Phillips, who everybody should know by now, I am big on him, was placed on IR last season very early with a hamstring injury. Westbrook-Akine is signed for 1 more year, but was truly just lackluster in his performances. I think he had 2 weeks where he had 8 targets, and pretty much the rest of the season he had 3. All right. So we've come to a point where we need some optimism, a spark of hope beyond they didn't add anybody else to fuel the fire that could be potential for Treylon Burks. One part of that being his week 5 injury where he got turf toe and then placed on IR for 4 weeks. Well, we hope he doesn't have that again, which probably also affected the way that he performed the rest of the year. I don't know if anybody else has had turf toe before, but it is quite painful. So after the week 5 game, I believe it was the Indianapolis Colts, he was in a walking boot. They needed to move him to IR. So coming into this year, likely he's going to have healthy foot, healthy conditioning, and really starting his season off in a much better note than where we left it last year. Treylon has full capability to dominate the receiving target share for the Titans and lock himself into what would likely be a lower wide receiver 2 placement for fantasy this year. That will come with 5 to 8 touchdowns. He's going to have to use his frame, strong hands, and his contested catch ability to really help this to come to fruition. He's really a buy low candidate for me right now because some people have started to sell him off for, like early second round picks or multiple seconds. And at that price, I would definitely buy. I would still be willing to do a late 2023 first if you haven't had your rookie draft yet, or even a mid to late 2024 first. Burks, with a full healthy season, should easily eclipse the 100-yard target mark. Even in his limited capacity his first year, he was over 50. If he's able to make the leap from a wide receiver 7 tier up to the wide receiver 2 tier this year, he is poised for a year 3 breakout. But right now, the things that we do know, Tennessee fired their old offensive coordinator. They brought up a guy named Tim Kelly. Tim Kelly was the offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans when Deshaun had his huge year of passing 4,800 yards and 33 touchdowns. This offense will predicate itself on play action, tight ends working the flats, and possibly, likely, the slot receiver will be working flats as well. And the X receiver doing a lot of backside or weak side slants and really playing into hopefully what could be one-on-one coverage. To me, that's just like ching, ching, ching money. Because this is a scheme that's going to fit everything that we should see or want as fantasy managers. Of course, there's going to be lots of different plays, but most of the playbook is going to be where they have similar setups and run multiple plays out of that setup, making play action moves, quick reads, and really putting the quarterback into a easy position to find open receivers. It's going to be quick passes and let the players play. It's going to be a lot of predication on play action. And we all know that Tennessee has phenomenal running game. So this should also help hopefully alleviate some boxes being loaded for Derrick Henry, which that hasn't mattered much. But all of this said, with the way this is coming together, it should really highlight not only Burks's flat, screen, and slant route favoritism, where he truly shines, but players like Phillips, Chikozim, and Derrick Henry are now on my interested to acquire list. We've seen many players have strong second seasons and things change from there. Good, bad, likewise. There's a lot of things that say Treylon Burks rookie season into the second season shouldn't have that big of a jump. But from what I'm seeing, a guy came in out of shape, worked his way to be in shape, got to the start, got injured, came back from injury, had some changes at quarterback, got a concussion, had to miss a few more weeks. Kind of messes with your season, messes with your flow. And we all know wide receivers are all about getting in the flow, getting their offensive feel, being able to do what they do best. You should really expect to see him grow in the second year. He was down at 4.9 targets per game. There were running backs that had more targets per game. This is going to be unlikely to repeat itself, as one target left. That's Robert Woods. The offensive coordinator change. Even Mike Vrabel has come out and said the offense isn't broken. It's not in need of repair. It just needs to be put back on track. That is what I'm expecting from the Tennessee Titans and Treylon Burks for this year. Things are going to get back on track. Things are going to go in a positive direction. This video was a lot of fun because I I had to dig through a lot of different tabs, a lot of different research to find what really happened with Treylon Burks. And to me, it just looked like it was unfortunate events that ended up leading him to a spot where he did the best he could. Now we go into this next season, and we've seen some sparks of hope. We've seen a really good game. And with the 2023 season starting to get closer and closer, I am definitely looking to acquire Treylon Burks. And if I've already have him, I'm not really looking to move him. I am waiting for this flower to blossom I think this is a receiver that we see some growth in year 2. And by the time year 3 comes around, he is going to be hopefully ready to meet the expectations that we drafted him last year in, and see him be that alpha receiver that Tennessee wants him to be, and somebody that could be somebody you picked up for cheaper or lower cost and get some great production out of. So hope this is helpful for everyone. I had a great time researching it. Till next time, have a great one.